You may remember not too long ago I posted a Christmas video with some of my toys, and these pace systems was definitely in that video, part of the toys. I'm finally able to get to them as things have been rather hectic. We're going to start with this box here, which is a MBT-100. This box here is for desoldering. This is model number MBT-100. And then we'll eventually end with this one right here, which is a MBT-210. But first we're going to start with this box. I'll plug it in, we'll give a little bit of demo, we'll hear the motor. We're going to disassemble this, and I'm going to pull this off. I think all I need to do is just, well, I guess not. I thought maybe just pluck that off, but apparently not. Here I have the device assembled with the gun plugged in, and we've got power plugged to it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the switch and push this little button. You'll get to hear the motor in this. Now my intent for this is only parts only. I have absolutely no intention in restoring or rebuilding this device. I'm only plugging this in, powering this in on for your benefit only. I've already heard the device, so let's go ahead and do that now. Now that you've heard the motor and seen why this is just a partser, and not only that, these boxes are fairly cheap. You're going to spend more for the gun than you will the box. You'll spend probably 4 times as much for the gun than you will the box. And in my earlier video from Christmas, I stated that these boxes are from about the mid-90s. I've only seen one reference to that, and I have nothing, no other source to substantiate that, but I do believe that that is a correct assumption, that it is from the early to the mid-90s. Before I disassemble this, I thought that I would show you what the backside is. I can't remember if I did that in the earlier video, but here we are now. We have AC mains input, we have a fuse right here, we have our main selector 120 or 100, and then we have a hard switch. I'm sorry, I misspoke. This is not a hard power switch. This is actually another, this is a reset button, just in case the fuse don't blow. How odd, I know. And here's a close-up of all that goodness. And here on the sides and the top, you will see these groove channels. And what these are is to allow you to mount your hanger off of the body of the device. And hanger, what I mean for that is for your gun, your desoldering gun, or your soldering iron. I would show you that, but I just don't have the other hanger right handy. I went ahead and removed the screws from the front. This sample that I have here only had 5 screws holding it in, but most definitely it had more holes than that. Somebody else has been inside this, which is probably atypical. So let's go ahead and open this up for the first time. I've not seen in this. So this is a big hunk of aluminum, which would be fantastic for heat sink if I ever needed heat sink material. So here on the back of this, as you see, it's pretty simple, pretty basic. Control, tube, not a tube, and grounding strap. So I wasn't sure how this came off, and looking at the back, since the control is attached here with a nut, I'm going to say it's safe to say that yes, this control does just pop off. And we're going to either prove that theory or we're going to break that thing. I really don't want to break this because this is the only reason I bought this, was for this control right here. Well, maybe that is just one piece and it's not meant to come off in pieces. So let me leave that alone. Inside the board, okay, well that's off. Looks like it came off the motor all on its own accord. There is a closer look at it. So all I'm going to do on this is pull this off and mount it to mine. Again, not wanting to break the control. As I don't want to have to repurchase this again. Here I've removed the motor board. And I would imagine it probably wouldn't be all that hard to rebuild that little motor if you needed to, providing rebuild kits were available. As you can see, not much to it. Really big Xenon diodes, a big capacitor, 25 volts at 4700 microfarads, and that's a Paycom, P-A-C-C-O-M brand. IC chip and a few other components. I'm not seeing any writing on the board or the motor. I'm sure it's in the parts list. I just thought if one was there, I'd tell you what it was. It says PACE 1200-0067, revision H is in hotel. And we have a date right here of 6/89. So just a little older than I anticipated. We have a piece of glue underneath that transistor. And then we have some support right here for the motor to mount to. And a big ground plane. Inside the aluminum case you can see the transformer and the other pieces and parts back there. And now I'm going to pull this control. This is a 1/2 inch. And it does appear that that is one solid piece. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. Either way, we have it out. That's what we're going to... We'll replace that portion of it. And now I have the other one in position to be disassembled. I could probably just leave this on. However, I will remove them so you could see how they insert. Fairly simple, fairly easy. And it's just held on by the screw here. Compression. And depending on how you mount this, you could mount this as you would like. And as you see, it's a little different here on the back, where all we have is just mains input, and this one's different. This one has a foot pedal control, which I do have, and that controls the DeSolder gun. That way you don't have to push the button because that's hard. You could use your foot. And now I'm ready to remove the face, and it's done by removing all these screws here. Let me do that real quick. Here I have all these screws removed. I've not opened this up to look inside. We will do that together. And right away, not so easy to pull apart. Here you can see I have some cables that I need to unplug in order to pull this completely out. After messing around with it for 10-15 minutes, I'm not going to be able to pull this board out as easily as I thought. I would need to disassemble the rear and unplug some cables back there to pull it out. And honestly, I really don't see needing to go that far in this little project. I think I've taken it as far as I really want to. If I find a need that I do need to pull it out for further servicing, I will. Looking at the back of the display, there is a date code of 4 of 93, so this puts this one slightly newer than the other one, mid-90s, so now we all know. The service manual for this one is definitely online, so if you have one of these or you just want to look at it, by all means search and you will find. What I will do is I will bump the camera in a little closer and hit that with my torch or flashlight and give you a little bit better view. And here we are now looking inside. That device right there is the motor. The top hose is the hose that we are after. And I did find the broken piece, or the piece broken right there, and I did find its associated washer rattling around in the case. That's the main board right there, power supply board. And this device right here is another filter, which is what you've seen on the handle in the last shot when I had this one hooked up. So it's really cool that it does have two filters. Now, from my perspective, from what I could see, it really don't look dirty. So I'm not going to sweat it right now in trying to pull that out and clean it or service it or buy another one. So that's it. Let me go ahead and pull this off and get the other piece put in line. Rubber is malleable, so I don't have to worry about cutting the wire, the cable or anything. While I was reassembling this and tightening down this port, I thought, well, hey, let's tighten down this port, or I'm sorry, the other way around. And by doing so, I snapped off the other port there, and it was totally my fault. Was not thinking. So I put my nut driver on the front side and tighten it down from that side, just give it a quick little snug, and wasn't thinking that that's plastic, and I just put that top one in, and the threads on these have a keyhole slot. So of course the plastic is not going to give outside of breaking, and that's exactly what it did. Luckily I did have the spare piece off of the other one, and so I just put that on. So I'll have to troll and look for an extra one or two of those at a later date and time. Let me go ahead and finish assembling this, and then we'll carry on from there. Now I have it all reassembled, and since I have that reassembled, let me go ahead and show you take a tour of the face. Here we have the on-off control. We have LED display, and here we have switch between Fahrenheit and Celsius. We have our push buttons here to set our memory for the temperature, and we have either control which sets the temperature for either gun, and this here is a toggle switch that will toggle between which display you want to look at or set. And down here we have ports for our iron and for our desoldering gun. This port right here is a BNC connection, a standard, a standard banana connection, and this will allow you to plug in a ground, so you can plug this directly into your device, so you have proper grounding between the two. And then we have where the input of our gun goes, so for your desoldering gun. So when you go to remove some solder, this here sucks in air and that sucks out air, and along with your solder. And now the next thing is to show you the guns. The desoldering gun that comes with the device is a solder extractor Sensa Temp 2. Don't remember the exact model number, but I will put that on the screen for you. And this is like a lot of guns. We have our PTT right there. And pushing that little momentary button is what activates the pump and allows it to suck solder through the iron. We have ventilation right here, and we have a little window right there. We got two cords. One is for your power and data, which does go back to the display that tells it at what temperature the gun is at. The soldering iron is set up the same way with the data pins. The soldering iron is also a sensitemp soldering iron 2, and again the number will be on the screen. On the desoldering gun, we do have the two cables as stated. We have the data cable, and then we have the air cable, which is what's used for the suction as well as to remove content. Content theoretically is not supposed to go through the hose, but as we've seen, once we had this tore apart, there was a Visi filter, and as you see, we do have a Visi filter here as well at the end of the hose, which plugs into the bottom port here. Now, filters. As we saw, we have a filter inside, we have a filter at the end of the hose, and we also have another filter inside the gun. Which pops out easier than I make it look. At the end of this, inside of this handle, you need to be very careful pulling this out. Because there is a glass tube which resides inside this handle. And I can see now why this is broken. Trying to get in there to remove that. There we go. And this is where all the content gets caught up in, and you can see right down the tube there is another filter. I'm going to leave this out because I will replace that filter. Looking inside the handle, you'll see just a hollow tube which butts up against the heating element. The soldering iron is not quite as elaborate as that. It's a nice small petite handle, but it does feel good in the hand. I have no use with this, either one of these, so time will tell if I like this in comparison to my Radio Shack. Some of you are familiar with that soldering iron or have seen it. That is a rebadged Hakko, in case you didn't know that. There is another company that did buy the design from Radio Shack, I believe, or from Hakko. I'm not sure how they acquired it, but this is still in production through this third-party company. Next up, we will go ahead and go through replacing the tips on both of these guns, replacing the filter in this tip, and then we will eventually plug it in, turn it on, and see how it works. One of the final things I will do to the device is clean this up. It is rather filthy, and before I put it in line my own self, I would like to have it at least looking nice at least once. One thing I had forgot to mention was in the desoldering gun, the part that actually plugs into the gun, into the tube, the section down here should also have a rubber grommet type thing to help make a secure seal into the tube. As such. Now that piece belonged on top of this gray piece. Over time it has long since become lost. And in order to replace that part, you actually need to replace this whole assembly right here. So I am currently actively looking for that piece itself. Up here in the housing, there is another seal that this tube actually plugs into up in here, which, as you can see right there, that red ring kind of looks like a hose washer. And that is exactly what should be here as well. It's a different fit, so I don't think it would actually fit in here. I know I can get just that rubber, so I might have to, I might try at another later date to see if that actually does work. As you can see here, an earlier repair, all they did was put silicone, which it worked. Up until I got curious and was wondering what that was, and I started picking on it. Now it has a slow leak. I do have silicone that I will apply to it after this video is done, and will let it cure thereafter. I won't do it on screen, and I won't do it during this project. We'll just get this project done, and during the time of testing this out, if this makes a noise or it may not suck properly, we will at least understand why. If we look down this tube, you can see the foam padding, which we will replace. One of the things that I had purchased was an accessory kit for this, and inside that accessory kit was this packet here. Inside this packet we have the multi-tool, which is tweezers, which will allow you to replace the tips while the tips are hot. And over here we can see we've got well, can't see it now, too good in the packet. There is a screwdriver. I've not opened this up yet, so this is the first time. There we go. That I should have probably did that in the first place. We can see here that we've got a screwdriver tip, and what that does is it allows us to, one tool, kind of like a painter's tool, one tool, just unscrew the tips and away you go. And you notice that there are holes in either side of this pair of tweezers, and that's designed for an awfully tiny beer bottle, Coke bottle, or something. I don't know, cheesy guess. I had also purchased a bunch of tips, and sitting here trying to figure out which one would be the best for soldering. I'm going to put this in, And for the desolder gun, I'm going to use that tip. Inside the accessory packet, we got a little piece of tubing. Now this tubing is silicone, very flexible. We received some of these clips here, and these clips hold the two hoses together. We received a filter, a fuse, and several tips for both desoldering and soldering. As you can see, this filter really doesn't look all that dirty. Let's go ahead and pick that out and inspect the rest of it. And for that, I'll just simply screwdriver. Now that I've successfully mingled it, we could see that probably a little overdue. Big contrast. Looking at my Chinese desoldering gun, I see that I have a 1mm tip on that. Well, of course I know it's a 1mm, but visualize it. And I believe that this one here is pretty close to that. So I'll go ahead and put that in. And you do notice how long the tips are compared to what's actually sticking out. And per the book, that's exactly what it calls for, is for it to stick out that far. Now, if you don't have that tool, you by all means can use a smaller flathead screwdriver. There is no doubt that that won't work. So pulling out this tip, you can see. Now keep in mind, I've cleaned this tip once before and put it back in, turned it on, and it immediately went black. And what you're looking at here is the actual tip that was in there when I pulled it out. When I pulled it out and cleaned it, I did spin it around to put the nicer end on it. So as you can clearly see, this has definitely been ridden hard and put away rather wet. The tip was also bent, and I straightened that out the best I could for what it is. And now let me compare. And it does appear that this is the same size as that. The front of the tip has a bevel to it. That way you know which end is up. The reason for the length and why they want you to go in as deep as you do is that the tip actually goes down, way down into the core, the heater core, and it is something that definitely you can feel. That way, also when it's that deep in the core, I should say, when it's that deep in the core, the heat will also, not also, but will radiate evenly around it. So since I bought this goofy thing, let's see how well it works. It worked out okay. If you don't have one of these, then that would work out. Screwdriver, I liked better. To attest to the fact of how dirty, how hard, how hot these tips have been, this tip I did not clean. And just for the heck of it, I did try to solder with this tip, and to no avail. It did not work. I had to crank the gun way high in order for it to melt, and at that melting point, it really didn't stick. I changed my mind, and I'm going to use this tip right here. This was also in the accessory, and I like the size of this one better. You also note that the other end is not set up to solder off either. So apparently somebody got crafty with their grinder. And this one actually looks like a 16 penny nail. Now that I've got those two pieced together, let's go ahead and plug them into here, into the box, and let's give everything a test. Now these plugs are notched. They have a little key notch, and they will only go in the one way. Since I don't have the hangers set up, I'm only going to do one at a time, as I plan on, if this is a success, cleaning the box. Actually, you know, since they are sitting like that, I will clean the box, and then I'll attach them. This one here plugs in the same way as that one did. Now, if you only had one plugged in but not the other, well, that side will not power on. It'll essentially be a dead port. And this you just simply plug right here into that hose. And that's it. I have it all assembled now. I don't have these snugged. I don't really need to. It'll turn on just the way it is. Next thing to do is to throw a main switch. I do have it plugged in to mains. Now this will be the first time since I did all this to see how it works. We are doing this together. Now the temperature we're looking at is in the for the iron, the solder iron, and then if we switch it over here, we're now looking at the desoldering iron. I do smell heat. We are heating up somewhere somehow. And it's really interesting. When I had that going, I did feel wind blowing out of that. That is heating up. I could smell it, and I feel the temperature. Nice thing is they are not turning black. Okay, very good. Let's see now what happens. Tip's still looking good, nice and shiny. And that one is starting to turn a little color. Have a test board and some test solder. We'll go ahead and try the tip here, and according to that we're at about 542. Oh yeah, definitely melt solder. However, on that thicker piece, it's not sticking because the temperature. Let me zoom in closer. Not sure how much we'll be able to see with my hand in the way. Turn the juice up a little bit. And right now it's showing that we're over 700 degrees and climbing, but for testing purposes. Oh yeah. As you see, nice big blob, and we're settling around about 685, give or take. Yep. Perfect. That is fantastic. I don't have anything to wipe my tip on. Okay, so that looks fantastic. So now the next thing is desoldering. That's probably too big. Let's see. Let's give it a shot. That's also showing about 655 degrees. The prong might be way too big for this hole. And as you see, even though it was too big, it sucked it right out of there. Very, very cool. Next thing I'm going to try is plucking this capacitor right here. And I'm going to do this without wetting or retinning this. I'm just going to go for broke and see what happens. The tip is changing colors. We expect that. Now this is by no means the right way of doing it. Oops. I could see why that foot switch would definitely come in handy. But I keep bumping that. Okay, so we will need to tin that. And there we go. It took a little bit. I think part of the problem was, of course, being brand new to it, to this device, this type of device. And I think also the tip might have been just slightly too big for those leads. So practice, practice, practice for sure, not only on the device, but also what tip, what tool for the application. But I got it out of a multi-layer board, and that is fantastic. So there we have it, the Pace MBT-210 from 1993-94, and it works. So just new tips was really, I think, all it needed. And so the next thing I'm going to do, I won't do that on camera. This video is done. I will clean it up and get it all stabbed back into place, or into its new home. The Radio Shack has been a fantastic solder station, and it's definitely one that I will keep. I won't get rid of this one. It'll just go into retirement, and as a backup, I will keep it there. If I had room, I would probably keep it out as well, and different tool for different application, I guess. I don't know. I do like the Radio Shack. The Radio Shack has, as you see, 3 program memories, and I do use them. But on the other hand, I've got a desoldering gun that is not Chinese. It's the real mill deal. Alright, thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of it. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, then by all means, that's fine too. Tell me why you didn't like it. Educate me in bringing forth better videos. I would appreciate that. With that all said and done, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.